In 2001, researchers gave healthy, well-rested volunteers a single tiny injection, zero point 0.8 nanograms per kilogram of body weight, less than 1/1,000,000th of a gram, an amount so small it would take 25,000 of those doses to fill a teaspoon. 90 minutes later, every single participant reported the same thing: exhaustion, emotional flatness, the inability to concentrate, the desire to do absolutely nothing. These people weren't infected. They weren't sleep deprived. No drugs were involved. Their immune systems had been switched on, and their brains had responded by shutting everything down. Now here's the part that changes everything. The molecule they used, your body produces it every day. And according to NHANES, the largest ongoing health study in the United States, roughly 1 in 3 American adults has elevated levels of it circulating in their blood right now. Silently, chronically, with one primary symptom: exhaustion. CDC data from 2023 found that 13.5% of American adults, roughly 35 million people, feel very tired or exhausted most days of the week. Among women aged 18 to 44, it's 1 in 5. These aren't sick people. These are people who show up to work, answer emails, make lunches, and feel like they're doing all of it through wet concrete. A 2007 study published in the Journal of Occupational and Environmental Medicine calculated the economic cost, $136.4 billion a year in lost productivity, not sick days. Presenteeism, being physically there, mentally offline. Most of those people will try to fix it the same way: more coffee, more sleep, a new supplement, a new routine. Some will get a diagnosis: burnout, low iron, depression. What almost none of them will ever be told is that their exhaustion might be driven by a biological state that has nothing to do with how busy they are or how much they sleep. A 2013 study from University College London tracked 4,847 healthy civil servants for 3 years. None of them had fatigue at the start. But those with elevated levels of two inflammatory markers, C-reactive protein and interleukin-6, were significantly more likely to develop chronic fatigue by the study's end. Not sick, not diagnosed with anything, just ordinary, apparently healthy adults with inflammation they couldn't feel. And if you're asking, why do healthy people have elevated inflammation in the first place? Hold that thought, because the answer will change how you think about what you eat, how you sleep, and what you do for the first 2 hours of every workday. Meet Tom. Tom has been exhausted for 4 years. Not the tired that a good night's sleep fixes, the kind where you wake up after 8 hours and immediately feel like you need to go back to bed. He's had blood work done twice, both times normal. Iron, fine. Thyroid, fine. Vitamin D slightly low. Here's a supplement. Tom takes the supplement, downloads a sleep app, cuts back on alcohol, buys a $300 mattress topper, still exhausted. What nobody told Tom is that the one test that might explain everything was never ordered: his high-sensitivity C-reactive protein, his hs-CRP. If tested, Tom's number would come back at 4.2 milligrams per liter. That puts him in the top third of American adults. And it means his immune system is running at a low, constant simmer, sending chemical signals to his brain around the clock that say, slow down, rest, don't bother. Here's why. In the 1980s, a veterinary physiologist at UC Davis named Benjamin Hart made a strange observation. When animals get sick, they don't just develop physical symptoms. They behaviorally withdraw. They stop eating. They sleep more. They lose all motivation. Hart called this sickness behavior. He argued it wasn't a side effect of illness. It was a deliberate evolutionary strategy, a way of conserving energy so the immune system could do its job. In 2008, neuroscientist Robert Dancer published a landmark paper in Nature Reviews Neuroscience. The title, From Inflammation to Sickness and Depression, When the Immune System Subjugates the Brain. Subjugates, that's the word he chose, because that's exactly what happens. Inflammatory cytokines, proteins like interleukin-6 and TNF-alpha, travel from wherever they're produced in the body to the brain via 3 routes. The fastest is the vagus nerve, the long cable running from your gut to your brainstem. Within minutes, inflammation anywhere in your body signals your brain. Brain immune cells, called microglia, then activate and produce their own cytokines. The brain begins inflaming itself. But the specific mechanism that kills your drive? Cytokines interfere with dopamine. Research from Emory University showed that inflammatory molecules reduce the availability of a compound called tetrahydrobiopterin, BH4, which is essential for synthesizing dopamine. Less dopamine, less motivation, less reason to do anything. A 2010 UCLA study went further. They gave healthy volunteers endotoxin, the same compound used in that 2001 German study, and put them in a brain scanner. The ventral striatum, the region most responsible for anticipating reward and generating the urge to act, went quiet. Not gone, just dimmed. That dimming is Tom's 3 p.m. wall. That's the reason you can know exactly what you need to do and still not do it. That's not laziness. That's neuroinflammation. Now, you've probably already made a mental leap. You're thinking, okay, inflammation causes fatigue. I need an anti-inflammatory diet. Omega-3s, turmeric, cold plunges. Got it. Here's the problem. That's exactly the wrong frame. The question isn't, how do I add anti-inflammatory things to my life? The question is, why is my inflammation so high in the first place? Because when researchers actually dug into that, dietary trials, sleep deprivation studies, cortisol tracking, microbiome analysis, what they found was genuinely uncomfortable. Most people with chronically elevated inflammation don't have a deficit of anti-inflammatory inputs. They have a daily flood of pro-inflammatory ones that they don't recognize because every single one of them has been completely normalized. And the 4 biggest culprits, not what anyone's talking about. Driver 1. Ultra-processed food. A 2022 analysis of 21,315 adults in the Molisani study, one of the largest dietary cohort studies in Europe, found that the single strongest dietary predictor of elevated C-reactive protein wasn't fat, sugar, or red meat. It was the degree of food processing. Why? Because ultra-processed foods contain advanced glycation end products, AGEs, compounds formed when proteins and fats are heated at high temperatures. A controlled trial found that 6 weeks on a high AG diet raised CRP by approximately 35%. 6 weeks on a low-AG diet lowered it by 20%. The breakfast Tom just ate contained enough AGEs to sustain a measurable inflammatory response for hours. Driver 2. Insufficient sleep. A 2004 study at Penn State, published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, took healthy adults and cut their sleep from 8 hours to 6 for 1 week. 1 week. Measurable 24-hour IL-6 secretion increased. TNF-alpha rose in male subjects. The immune system registered sleep restriction as a biological threat and responded accordingly. A 2016 meta-analysis of 72 studies, over 50,000 people, confirmed the pattern. Sleep disturbance reliably raises CRP and IL-6. And critically, 3 nights of recovery sleep only partially reversed the damage. Every night you sleep under 7 hours, you are not just tired tomorrow. You are generating inflammation that will make you more tired the day after and the day after that. Driver 3. Chronic psychological stress. Cortisol is your body's natural anti-inflammatory. Short-term stress briefly suppresses inflammation. But a 2012 study from Carnegie Mellon University, published in PNAS, found that with sustained chronic stress, cells develop glucocorticoid receptor resistance. They stop responding to cortisol's anti-inflammatory signal. Cortisol keeps rising, it stops working, and inflammation rises with it. The system designed to fight inflammation has become resistant to the very hormone that controls it. Driver 4, and this surprises everyone, is sitting still. A 2011 NHANES study tracking 4,757 American adults using accelerometers found that increased sedentary time predicted higher CRP independently of whether people exercised. Meaning, you can go to the gym every morning and still have chronically elevated inflammation if you sit for 8 unbroken hours afterward. The active couch potato. It's a real documented phenomenon. It affects almost every office worker in the developed world. Now meet Emma. Emma had been exhausted for 2 years. Same story as Tom. Tried everything. Sleep apps, supplements, therapy, acupuncture. A standing desk she also never stood at. Then she stopped asking, how do I get more energy? And started asking, what is generating this inflammation? She made 4 changes. Not supplements. Not biohacks. She dramatically cut ultra-processed food. She treated 8 hours of sleep as a professional obligation, not a luxury. She walked for 30 minutes at lunch, not to exercise, just to break the sitting. And she took chronic stress seriously enough to actually reduce it, not just manage it. 12 weeks later, she had her CRP retested, 2.1 milligrams per liter. She said it felt like someone had turned the lights back on. Here's something that almost everyone gets wrong about omega-3s. They don't fight inflammation the way an anti-inflammatory drug does, by blocking the signal. Harvard biochemist Charles Surin discovered that EPA and DHA are converted by your body into an entirely new class of molecules he named specialized pro-resolving mediators. Resolvins, protectins, meresins, these don't suppress inflammation. They actively turn it off. They resolve it at the cellular level. Chronic low-grade inflammation at its core is a failure of resolution. The off switch is broken. Omega-3s help repair the off switch, and they're one piece of a larger picture. A 2016 analysis of the PREDIMED trial, 7 in 447 adults, the largest randomized nutrition study ever conducted, found that people following a Mediterranean diet showed 16% reductions in CRP, IL-6, and TNF-alpha after 3 to 5 years, not from a drug, from food. And exercise, even modest exercise. When your muscles contract, they produce their own version of IL-6, but muscle-derived IL-6 is anti-inflammatory. It stimulates the release of molecules that directly suppress TNF-alpha. Your muscles, when used, are a functioning anti-inflammatory system. A 2017 meta-analysis of 83 randomized trials found that exercise training reduced CRP with a measurable effect size, and the result held even when participants lost no weight at all. Tom eventually asked his new GP to add hs-CRP to his next blood panel. The result, 4.2, meant nothing to him until he looked it up. He made the same 4 changes Emma made. He didn't overhaul his life in a week. He just stopped doing the 4 things that were generating inflammation faster than his body could clear it. 8 months later, his CRP was 1.9. He told me the most surprising thing wasn't the energy, it was the absence of a feeling he'd had every morning for 4 years, a low-level dread. The dread of having to get through another day on a body that kept refusing to cooperate. That dread, it turns out, was a symptom of inflammation, telling his brain, conserve everything, stand down, don't bother. That's sickness behavior, activated not by infection, but by the accumulated consequence of 4 entirely ordinary, entirely modern lifestyle patterns. Here's what I want you to take away. Fatigue is not a character flaw. It is not a productivity problem. It is not evidence that you can't handle your life. For a significant portion of chronically exhausted people, fatigue is a biological signal. An immune system running hot on processed food and insufficient sleep and unresolved stress and too much sitting, sending the oldest message in evolutionary history to your brain, stand down. The good news, real, evidence-based good news, is that the 4 drivers of low-grade inflammation are among the most modifiable variables in human biology. You don't need a prescription. You don't need a $400 supplement stack. You need to stop doing the things that are generating inflammation faster than your body can resolve it, and then let the oldest anti-inflammatory system in human history, movement, sleep, whole food, reduced psychological threat, do what it was always designed to do. If you take one thing from this video, ask your doctor for an hs-CRP test. It costs almost nothing. It's on standard panels. Most GPs will order it if you ask. If your number is above 3, and statistically there's about a 1 in 3 chance it is, you now know exactly what to do about it. You're not tired because you're weak. You're not tired because you're busy. You're tired because you're inflamed. And inflammation, unlike almost everything else in modern life, actually responds when you stop feeding it.